Hello. Hi, Sayantan.
Yeah, are you able to hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Okay, great.
Okay, so you can start your presentation. Yeah, thanks. I've already introduced you, by the way, so you can introduce yourself and start presenting. Thank you, Sayantan.
Yeah, thank you. Please let me know if you guys are able to see my screen.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Santan. I am currently working on my PhD in University of Arkansas. Also, I am a graduate research assistant in Cosmos Research Center. So basically, today's topic would be a computational approach to analyze social movements and why it matters. So, yeah, so before starting this, let's discuss a little bit about the background. When we look around at the world we live in today, civil rights or women voting or labor protections or any kind of environmental awareness, it's easy to think that's just how the society is, but almost none of those things just appeared. They were won, or very often they were won by people who didn't have much formal power, but when they acted together they tried to raise their voice. And like other than after some of the events, their voice was actually turned into a fulfilling agenda. That's what makes a social movements worth studying. So basically, for today's class, I want to do three things today: explain why we should study social movements, and how social movements are connected to collective actions, and how we can computationally measure the collective action framework, including some of the NLP analysis and with a specific context and case studies. So first, as I was saying, we study social movement because they change society. A lot of major reforms, as we know, didn't start inside the parliaments or the Congress. They actually started outside and very local and grassroots level, like in churches or in unions, on campuses, in the streets. So the idea is if we only study laws and elections, we see the final results, not the struggle or that struggle which produced it. Studying movements actually lets us see the whole process of that particular social change. Uh, Social movement also shows us how power actually works. Yes, there are some formal institutions like court, legislature, presidents, but people outside those institutions can actually put pressure on them. Movements are a way for ordinary people to say we exist, and we are making a claim that if you are going to ignore us, we are going to make a certain groups with a common agenda, and we are going to raise our concern until or unless if it is getting fulfilled. If we ignore movements, we miss the whole dimensions of that politics. Also, movement help understands conflict, not just the stability. A lot of sociological theory explains that why society holds together. Movement explains why people sometimes say, no, this isn't fair. We want a certain change. If we want a realistic picture of the society, we just cannot only study order, we also have to study the protests which may topple the order as well. Now, a simple way to explain, lots of study has been done in social movement, and there are couple of sociological theory has been developed to understand and explain how this social movement is actually happening. One such sociological theory is collective action. A simple way to put it is this: like collective action is anytime people act together towards a goal. That could be signing a petition, going on a strike, or joining a march, or even coordinating, let's say, coordinating an information campaign online. um, on other hand, a social movement is actually a collective action. I mean, let's say form of a collective action that becomes organized. Somebody said something.
Hello? Hello?
Uh-huh.
So we are only seeing your first slide.
Yes, I didn't change the slide, that's why.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So yeah, basically the social movement is a form of a collective action that becomes organized, sustained, and aimed at a broader social or political changes. So yes, all social movements are built on collective action, but not all collective action uh, grows into a social movement. So I will talk about this more, but this in this particular class we are going to talk about a specific focus, specific case study, which is the Brazil presidential elections and the election fraud claim which was raised by pro Bolsonaro supporters. Basically, there were two presidential candidate. One is Jair Bolsonaro, and another presidential candidate was Lula da Silva, if I'm pronouncing the name correctly. When there was a result was declared, uh, the pro Bolsonaro fan and also Jair Bolsonaro claimed that election was rigged and not fair, and hence this elections is not going to be accepted by the people. And subsequently, there was after a few months there was a insurrections where pro Bolsonaro supporters um, attacked the capital. So yeah, in this particular case, the objective for this movement, to study this movement, to understand how online crowds are becoming purposeful, because there was a huge involvement of social media. Social media was there, to understand how that social media data is actually that social media data is actually cognitively influence a user to gather certain peoples, or maybe joining a group which has a shared sense making, and then mobilize into doing something which is not exactly illegal. So that is going to be that is what we try to study here. And as I was discussing about the theory which we were going to discuss, so collective actions is nothing but, like, let me break it down. First, at the individual level, every movement, when we talk about a movement, starts with people deciding that I will join. No movement is magically created. It's kind of a lots of a small kind of small choices. Now, um, if we zoom into this particular sociological theory, as I already mentioned, that social movement are built out of collective actions and people doing something together that they couldn't do alone. But sociologists point out something important: just because people are unhappy doesn't mean they will act. Lots of people are frustrated, but most days nothing happens, right? So the main question is, why do people ever act together at all? So one classic way to frame this is to say that there was a successfully collective identity formation happens. Um, Collective identity formation means when, suppose if I say that in ULR we do not have any good canteen, let's say, and I am reaching out to different people, and I'm saying, like, do you know, we can do better on the foods and canteens and these kinds of facilities. while people has those kinds of understanding, people were also actually suffering. Whenever I introduce this idea, they will also understand, yes, that is a legitimate concern, and how do we proceed from there, how do we do that. So basically that will bring other people who is having the same kinds of thought but never thought of doing something about it. So in a broader picture, it was only thinking from my side, but I started to reaching out. So now that I became we. This particular theory actually introduced in 1965 by a sociologist Mancur Olsons in the book The Logic of Collective Actions. And basically, other than Van Olson, there are lots of other people talked about collective actions. The main summary of this theories is it talks about strong group identity, like we workers, we student, we women, those kinds of thing. It also heavily based on the moral obligations, little bit on the social pressure as well, and coordination is another very important part of collective actions. As I gave you the example, um, if individual people are angry about it, like we must be angry about something all the day and every day, but not every day we see a very successful and violent mobilizations what we have seen for let's say US insurrections or Black Lives Matter movement and those kinds of things. So yeah, so coordination is also a very important part. Another theory which is based which is very important in social movement study, that is resource mobilizations theory. This particular theory shows up in the 1970s as a reaction to the older views that saw movements as emotional, irrational, or just response to the deprivation. But resource mobilization theory actually says no, movements are actually quite rational and organized. The key question is not are people upset, but lots of people are upset, but do they have a do they have proper resource and organization to turn that upset into an action? So basically, in a very lighter term, we can say, like again, the same example, even if we are angry and we coordinated and we came together, that does not mean we will be able to see a successful mobilizations, for example like US insurrections or Black Lives Matter. In this case, sociologist says that a successful identity formations will only works when there will be a good utilizations of resources. Now what counts as resources, that is it's like resources is one of the, obviously it's money, but it's more than that money, which like theorists talk about it as material resources. Obviously money is there, there has to be meeting space, printing, transportations, it can be, you know, spread, giving away the pamphlets or posting in social medias about a certain deprivations. There is also human resources where the leaders and members are being chosen. There is also social organizational resources where student clubs and unions are involved. There are cultural resources like symbols, narratives, or any kind of any specific slogan. And obviously one of the most important is the moral resources like legitimacy, solidarity, or sympathetic support, which is heavily associated with that contextual movement. Now the theory says a movement succeeded when they can mobilize these resources and coordinate them properly, as I mentioned. So in this particular theory actually is an extensions of collective actions theories, which says like mobilization will not happen, I mean collective action is not sufficient to make a movement successful until or unless there is a good utilizations of these mentioned theories. Now as I was saying, this is the case studies, Brazil elections. um, little bit I have talked about it. It based on a uh, rigged election or electoral fraud conspiracy. And on that particular conspiracy, it first started on the pro-Bolsonaro supporters started marching in the streets of big cities like and Rio de Janeiro and other one I don't remember right now. So it started from there, and afterwards, from October, it started, and this thing gradually built up to other uh, individual and scattered violent events, I should say. This particular protest was also heavily coordinated by the social media. In social media, there was clearly it was showing that there were two groups of people. One groups of people were saying election was fraud, and this person who is newly elected is nothing but did some kinds of unfair things, and some kinds of buying the elections, and this thing needs to be stopped. They actually in the several Instagram and Twitter posts, we noticed that they were actually tagging the army to come to the cities and save these institutions, like government institutions, from people from like to prevent this particular unfairness. There was also another thought, another kind of group was formed where civilians were actually trying to help the law enforcement to catch those miscreants who were causing this kinds of violent problem. They were using like specific hashtags and spreading the images of those violent protesters in the social media to help the law enforcement. All of this scattered incident actually summed up to a insurrection events which happened in January 8 um, in 2023, where nearly 4 to 5,000 Bolsonaro supporters stormed into the Congress building, and yeah, so that's what happened. We tried to study it in from the two different social media platform. One social media platform was multimodal. One social media platform was mostly textual. Even though we didn't taken care of the images, but we only focused on the textual data here. So we collected data from Twitter and Instagram. In first, we collected nearly 62,000 posts from Instagram and nearly 400,000 tweets from Twitter. After that, we did something called community detections. Community detection is a very common network science methods where we use certain algorithm to understand if that particular um, data after formation of a specific communication network, what kind of community and how many community were being formed in that particular data. So we actually taken care of the top three community for both of this case, because top three community has most of the posts. So what I'm saying here is that I think I may be a little bit wrong on the numbers, but almost more than 50% of data for Twitter was coming into the first top three communities, and I think nearly 60 or 70% data was coming into the top three communities for Instagram. And afterwards, we use those filtered Twitter's post and Instagram post to do three things: to understand how the identity was forming, how the mobilization happened, and how the coordination, to check the coordination, how network organization were happening. So to understand the coordination, we first did the network analysis. So basically, the theory of collective action says, in this case, there will be scattered individuals who will come together and come together on a basis of a shared grievance or shared injustice. So as you can see in this top, for both of the platform, it became dense after a certain time. So first it was very scattered, there was not that much cohesion for both of the Instagram and Twitter, but till we are going towards the insurrections time, it was actually getting dense. And also, as I was saying, we did a community detections and also modularity score analysis. Community detection is actually says how many communities are there, and modularity explains like how cohesive the network was. Um, the idea is if there is a successful collective identity formation is happens, then community is supposed to go down. So in this case also, for both of the platform, we saw community was going down and the modularity was going up, so which gives us an idea which complements the sociological theory where we are supposed to bring people together, and the cohesion should increase as people are getting engaged on a shared thoughts. Afterwards, we also did another analysis, and this was to understand the topic divergence. Topic divergence is something we try to understand on a temporal analysis, as you can see. In this case, we divided the whole timeline into the weekly data, and we tried to see what kind of topics were being discussed. Basically, we use the Jensen and Shannon divergence for understanding the topic divergence. And as you can see in this particular graph, that more we were going, this is the insurrection period actually, and topic in according to the topic divergence, the less score is actually says the less topics were there. So which complements the sociological theory as well. So the more we were going towards the insurrection event, the topic distribution were getting very less. Actually in the week of insurrection it was almost the lowest. And to understand what kind of things discussed, we also tried to do a topic analysis, just basic topic analysis, to understand what kind of frequent keywords that particular week it was showing. We found like all Brazil in street, Brazil was stolen, SOSFFA is a hashtag which was used for calling the army, requesting army to involve to capture the Capitol building, and in order to make it fair. Alexander Morales in the chain. So this is a person, he declared when this kinds of violent problem was happening. He was a Supreme Court judge who said like he will identify the individual, and he will try to prosecute them. Because of that, person's name also came. There are several people who were actually trying to tag international crime court to show that the winning candidate actually did something bad, or some way he rigged the election, so he should be prosecuted by the International Criminal Court. So these kinds of frequently used frequently used keywords were coming for Twitter data. For Instagram data, we see kind of a different scenario, because as you can see in the picture, there were several cases, several events. It actually gave us the lowest topic divergence results. We tried to see in almost all the cases why it was happening, and every cases we saw that all the call to actions and provocative keywords were coming. You can see come to street, Lula thief, Lula thief, Lula da Silva is the winning president, national shame, follow, all of these are like call to action keywords. Also this is the insurrection week where it was discussed like God, follow free, homeland, interventions. These kinds of keywords were uh, found. So basically, idea behind that analysis is to just understand, like, it is supposed to be, I mean, more we are going to the interaction events, people are going to discuss about topics which is mostly focused on that interactions. So it is expected that the number of topics and the topic distributions will decrease, which we saw in our results as well. Another analysis we have done from the morality perspective. So according to the moral foundations theory, like, this analysis was also built up on a basis of a moral foundations theory, which says resource mobilization theory is also based on three modal parameters, which is sympathetic support, which is solidarity, and legitimacy. We used EMFD dictionary, which is popular Python library, to analyze these kinds of modal foundations from a text. Um, Basically, EMFD works in a vice and virtue. There are two separate sections. We have to discuss it in some other classes, but let's just say we only talked about vice. There is a vice and there is a virtue. The concept behind that is, um, vice and virtue is like good and bad. So when we care someone, we can care someone in a good way, we can care someone in a bad way. For example, if I care about my parents, and if a person kidnap me, they can also say, I care about you, that's why I kidnapped you. So but there is a two distinct difference between those care, right? So one of them, the care is vice care, which is the bad care. One of the care is virtue care. So that's how the moral foundation theory works. In this case, we only consider the sympathetic support, solidarity, and legitimacy. Sympathetic support means if you are sympathetically involved with that particular case, obviously you will try to involve either offline or online. Solidarity, we all know, if you try to, if you somehow share the same concern like most of the people there, you will try to join the cause to help your fellow citizens. Solidarity comes from there, and legitimacy is obviously, it has to be believable, it has to be legitimate for you to get involved in those movements. So as you can see, for both of the Twitter and um, Instagram, there are certain fluctuations, but whenever we are going towards the January 8 riot, it is actually getting high. It is like significantly increasing. Um, all of the three parameters are increasing. Basically, in Instagram, the fluctuations are more because we kind of explained it in the paper which got accepted, that Instagram basically is a multimodal platform. So text is kind of secondary, where the images are the primary modality used in Instagram. So in many cases, we only got some of the hashtags. There was not actually many text. In several cases, we only got some emojis in the text. So that's the reason those cases it was not able to detect the modal foundations from those kinds of text. So that's why we received these kinds of fluctuations in this case. But on the broader cases, when it goes towards the January insurrections, we saw all of the three parameters were increasing significantly. So all of those three analysis actually shows how, I mean, not shows, like infers like how that there was a collective identity formation happens, which like people first started a movement from protesting about the electoral fraud, and afterwards there was a couple of protest incidents, scattered protest incident here and there, And all of those things accumulated and summed up to a January 8 insurrections. So that's the thing, that's the mostly the core idea of this study. Basically, there is a moral aspects of this study. Moral aspects talks about like collective identity influence the identity formations and resource mobilizations. Sorry. And dense community says like until or unless there is a proper coordinations and people are getting together on a shared understanding, collective identity formations will not happen. Also integration, this also shows like integrations of different sociological theory, which is collective actions theory and resource mobilization and moral foundations theories are there. So yeah, that is mostly what this study is about. Thank you very much for listening. If you have any questions, I can try to answer that. Thank you.
So no question from me either. And
Okay.
nice presentation, Santan. So if there are no more questions, I guess then we can conclude our lecture for tonight. And please submit. It's just a reminder. Please submit your assignment by the due time. Yeah, that'll be it. Thank you everyone for joining today's lecture.
Thank you, everyone.